Hello, networkers, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Network Engineer, where we answer one of your questions. And this is Q&A number 2. So let's go ahead and get started in this episode. And the first question is from Daryl Johnson, and he asks, Python is getting more interesting in this field. Do you think I should go that route after my CCNP? Yes, I think that's a very, very good idea, especially if you have done your CCNA and you're about to complete your CCNP. I think it's a really good thing to kind of take a break from the networking track and going towards your CCIE and get some programming experience. I mean, it's not really much of a detour. I think it's a good thing that you can add. What's really important though is to still make sure that you're gaining the networking experience. So if you got those certifications and you're getting the experience, absolutely though, getting Python programming and learning that I think is definitely a good step. Because as I have always said before, certifications are good. They get your foot into the door. It opens up to other possibilities or other opportunities that are out there. But the experience is what's really important for securing that job or the position that you're applying for. And if you have Python experience or just programming experience in general, that can provide another value add to the company because you can create automated type scripts or other type of applications that can be used to make your job easier and to be more productive on the network that you're managing. So yes, finish your CCNP, and then from there, go ahead and get the experience and learn Python programming. Now, unfortunately, I'm in the process of still developing our Python programming course for network engineers, so that is still a work in progress. It's very exciting, a lot of great things how I am getting it structured. So there's going to be some time until that is officially released. But you just go ahead, finish your CCNP, get the Python programming experience, and then from there, continue on to any other track that you want, like CCIE or security, just things like that. And the next question is from Sheldon Moss, and it is kind of a continuation of my conversation about Python that I answered for Daryl Johnson. So he says, I know you said that it is great to learn Python, and it is, but what about PowerShell? Is that good to learn for simple scripting? Don't waste your time with PowerShell. That is more for system administrators or system engineers that works in a Microsoft Active Directory environment. That's for scripting among the AD trees, okay? Not much in terms of learning about simple scripting. Don't waste your time there. If you want to learn about simple scripting, either do PHP, that's something that is very popular as well, okay? And there's some similarities, but really Python is really my recommendation as well, if you want to start out and learn programming. So just consider that. And the next question is another one by Sheldon Moss, which is a very good question, and I thought would be great for this Q&A. And his question is, with GNS3, the virtual lab that you can use in your environment for gaining kind of experience with configuration and support. So he says, I thought that with GNS3, we would need to have our own iOS configuration to load into the program. Can you talk more about that? That's a very good question. And it's very misleading in GNS3 and other similar kind of programs. They don't really talk about that very clearly. Because when you go to their website, you download the software, GNS3 software, on your Windows or your Mac system. Great, then you can start building out these topologies. But you need to have the actual software images for the equipment that you'll be using. So the iOS images for the routers and things like that. And that is not provided in the GNS3 downloads. Now, you got to read their facts page and their other forums, and they'll tell you, you have to get your own, legally, you need to get your own iOS images that you can then load and use within GNS3. So I wish all these websites can explain that a lot better and clearly, because a lot of people get confused. A lot of people get confused by that. So to answer your question, Sheldon, yes, you need to have your own iOS images. And that gets a little tricky because, well, how do I get those iOS images that I can use to build these topologies? So what most people actually do is they go ahead on eBay and they find some very cheap hardware that they can buy. Just one little router. But they want to determine what is the iOS, the feature set that is on that router. And of course, you want some like advanced IP services, a very strong feature set that you can learn and configure a wide variety of things. And basically, you go ahead, you get that router, and you transfer that iOS image, which is a bin file. You can just transfer that to a TFTP server. Now that's your image file. Now you can actually load that in GNS3 and use that particular router as a template for building your topology. So for me, for example, I have a very old Cisco 7200 series router running version 15.1. It's an old router, but it is relevant for all the topics that is needed for CCNP, NP, and IE level kind of stuff. Okay, so yes, that's really how you can do it. There is no other legal path besides you actually have to get a support contract with Cisco. So if you have a router and you want to get updated software, then you need to have a support contract. You can get the very cheapest contract that is out there, but you got to go through a Cisco partner to do that. Have fun with that. And then from there, with your Cisco CCO account, then you can go ahead and go on to the software download page and you go to your product and you can download the software that you're now legally able to use on your equipment or even in your particular virtual lab. So that is something that you need to consider if you want to use GNS3 and to build these virtual labs and to configure and to learn. Now, for me personally, I don't do a lot of GNS3 because of that limitation. I do something that for me is much more powerful than that. So Cisco has a virtual router called the Cisco CSR 1000V, and it is a free demo that you can download. You can activate the premium license, and it's running iOS XE. That means I get to do some serious stuff in terms of data center DCIs. I can do OTV, I can do Lisp, I can do advanced BGP with AdPath and prefix independent convergence. That's advanced stuff. I get to do all of that in the environment. Now, it does require to have a server that is running a hypervisor, basically VMware. So I have a VMware environment. And from there, I can create many different virtual routers. Now, it's not a graphical GUI interface, so you got to kind of understand how you can build that kind of topology. But that's what I use for learning and doing all of the advanced stuff that's out there. For CCIE, with security, with data center, it's more powerful, in my opinion, and more flexible than GNS3. Because with this virtual router, I got this installed and the iOS is already on there. Or the iOS XE is already on there. And it's basically licensed with a premium license. So I have access to all the feature sets. So I love that. I use the Cisco CSR 1000V more often than I use GNS3. So that could be something to consider as well for hands-on and learning. Moving along, the next question is from Earl Wake, and he talks more about his education background, that he is finishing his bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Congratulations for that. That's a big deal. And he has high passion with doing computer networking, and he wants to continue his education at a high level. So he's looking at going for his master's degree. So his question is that he wants to do his master's degree in either the US or in Europe. And he says that some people say that computer networking is in the computer science field or faculty or the department. And so he wants to take computer science for his master's in order to learn more about computer networking. Is that true? And do you have any suggestions about which universities is a good place to improve networking skills and concepts for a master degree? So I get a lot of questions very similar to this about, where within the college system can you learn about networking? And I have a hard time answering that because I have an honest answer for that. Don't waste your time with that. College is not the right platform to learn about computer networking. Okay. It is really as textbook as it can get. And yes, computer science gives you some exposure to that, but it's very, very minor. It's more really with programming. So that's good. You got some programming aspect there, but not much with computer networking. Look, I've actually have sat in classes that were teaching CCNA level classes because I was curious, like how does colleges do with networking type stuff? And I sat there in these classes and, just there to observe because I was curious. And I was like, wow. So they're paying all this money and they can basically just get a training series, a video series, or go to a boot camp class and get much more out of it. Because the people who are teaching it, they're not CCIEs that are teaching it. They're just people that are following the Cisco Academy program, and they're just teaching it in some kind of a structure. I found that being a complete waste of time. And I didn't give my comments because that's not my place, I also understand that people love a classroom learning environment. People love to go to a class with other students that they can learn and collaborate with. And there's a teacher and then there's questions that can go back and forth. There's exams. I get that. A lot of people don't do self-learning. Like I prefer self-learning. Give me a book, give me a lab. I can do it all on my own. I've always been like that. I understand that some people prefer to have a classroom setting for learning. But that's why I said that there are boot camp classes. There are particular classes that you can definitely learn. When it comes to networking, the learning the learning program is really with the certifications. Getting certified is really kind of your final exam. That's what it really is. Look, I graduated from San Jose State University and I got interviewed at Cisco. I talked about this a long time ago in other episodes. Cisco did not care about my education. They cared about that I had experience as a desktop person and as a server administrator. They didn't ask questions about my involvement in college. And I see very similar things now in the industry. So I'm not trying to tell you to don't pursue your master's. You want to continue that, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Do that. What I'm going to recommend is that you do look at other avenues for learning about computer networking because computer science is not going to get you there. The certifications will at least give you more of that foundation. So you got that. There are classes to learn about certifications and getting certified that way. Great. So you got that. And of course, I talk a lot about practical experience, so do that. So keep those considerations in mind because I don't know what are good universities that are out there. I don't. I interviewed a person who was a CCIE, a very low number, lower than my number, which went to MIT. So you're thinking, oh, he blew it out the park. No, he did not blow it out the park in terms of the interview process from a technical perspective. And that's proof that I always saw, this is another example that college is not teaching the level of networking from the perspective from our experience. So that's why you go to a lot of these boot camp classes. These are people that have been in the field. They know how to do networking. They know really how to teach that. And that's why a lot of these online sites that you probably can see in research, they've been there, done that. And I think that's a better format for learning about networking and not much from a university perspective. Okay, let's do one more question for Q&A, number 2. And this one is a long one, so I kind of summarized it here in my notes. And this is from Space Ghosty. Love the name, by the way. So let me get a quick recap about what's going on with him. So Space has been in the NOC for about as a NOC technician, basically, for about 6 months. And he has his CCNP in routing and switching. So that's really good. Okay, kind of an intermediate level. and he's interviewing for jobs as a network engineer. And he has obtained an opportunity to be a network engineer, but he's the only network engineer in that environment. And he's getting thrown, and he's getting a lot of responsibilities as a network engineer and stuff that he does not have particular experience with directly. Things like firewall experience, wireless, voice, basically not to mention all CCIE level topics experience. So I'm not sure what that means. Because that depends on what topics you're referring to though, because most topics could be maybe CCNP level. So it all depends. So he has some concerns and he is nervous because he is, yes, you're a network engineer, but he does not have the experience to kind of do some of the responsibilities that may be required of him. So he has some questions of, one, have you or anyone that I know have ever been in this position before? And would taking this role set me up for failure or success? What advice can you give me? Okay, so there's like 3 questions in there. So the first question is, have I been in that position before? I have not been in that position before. So my experience has always come from promotions. I am in a position, I do my job, and if there's an opening, I apply for that, and I get interviewed by other networking people, and they ask me questions about my experience, what I know, what I don't know. And based on that, either I get accepted or not accepted. In the cases of my experience, I do get accepted. So I go into those positions because I am qualified for what is outlined for the job requirements. So again, I have never encountered that or have known anyone that has been in that position. So you are definitely in a very, very rare situation of, I get it. You're probably in an environment though where, hey, this position is for networking. We need somebody to do it. You take care of it. You got your CCNP. You're good to go. Okay. So that does lead to a very interesting question that you ask. Does this set you up for failure or success? My answer would be both. It can set you up for both in terms of it could be successful for you. It can also be lead you to a failure. When a company does that, it demonstrates to me that they had never been burned before, because they probably thinking like, oh, it's IT stuff. Yeah, go ahead. Just take care of it. The firewall routers. I think they don't think it's not much of a big deal. And for most places, yeah, sure, it's not a big deal if it's a smaller size environment. But when it gets a little bit bigger, it's a different story. When I was hired at, which place was that? At a bank. There was one guy there. He's a good friend of mine. I still contact him a lot today. He's a sales engineer at Riverbed, but he used to do the networking there. And I saw some of the configurations that he did. It was a whole bunch of static routes. He didn't know about dynamic routing. It's not his fault. That's just not his experience. But that environment was like, we just need a person to take care of the network stuff. Just do what you got to do. And he's probably just went ahead and did some static routes, and he was proud about that. But when the company was growing, it was like, oh, that's just, okay, we can't do that anymore. So that's when they started to hire network engineers. So other engineers came on, then eventually I came on board and, basically did what my responsibilities will be. So he was very lucky, though, that problems did not actually occur. But usually when companies say, oh, just do it, though, they probably have never been in a situation where someone had brought something down and that impacts the business and their customers. Because when that happens, they are very careful about who they actually hire. But it could also be a very successful thing for you because you have finally gotten to a position that you are a network engineer. Congratulations. Celebrate and take advantage of that by learning everything that you can. So the question is, what advice can I give you now that can lead you towards more success? So I wrote some points here. You want to gain as much experience as possible. If there is firewalls and wireless and voice in the environment, you need to learn that. Okay? Learn all of that from training, labs, do whatever you can. when you're doing particular projects or things like that, it's important to actually communicate with the company and tell them that you would like to get this type of training to do your job more effectively and efficiently, I guess, right? That's important. And you can give them different options, training sites, videos, things like that, books, things like, and I think they will likely support you on that. I'm assuming that based on the environment. You also want to kind of take things slow and easy. So if you're working on projects, don't rush it. You don't have the experience. Just very slowly understand what you need to do and just do it carefully. Because when people rush, that leads likely to errors and problems. Don't do that. Keep it nice and simple, okay? You also want to be very clear on what needs to be done. So when someone says, "Oh, you set up this firewall," well, what does that mean exactly? Am I setting up a firewall? What kind of policies am I setting up? Am I going to do VPNs like to another location? Or we're going to set up remote access for users to access the network remotely? Be very clear about what do you want me to do. Be very clear on the objectives. Don't make any assumptions for that. Because if you make assumptions, it could bring things down, especially if you do not have the experience of really how to administer some of these products. Okay? And very, very important, if there is something that you simply just do not know, you need to say that. Don't say, "I'll figure it out." Don't do that. You're going to put yourself in a serious position where it could actually taint your experience there in that company and could taint your reputation leaving that company if you're fired or something like that. And that part I have seen. For that same environment for the bank, there was an incident where there were 2 network engineers there in that company. And there was a broadcast storm. Something happened. The whole network was down. And there's this one guy, he's panicking. He has no idea because he doesn't have much experience. Now, I don't know this person. It was something that was relayed to me because that person was fired a few days after this particular problem. So in that particular case, the network was down for basically 8 hours. It was basically down for the entire day. Oh, it was such a chaotic moment for that company. It was such a bad thing. You had directors and VPs of the company going into the data center saying, "What can I do? What can I do?" They were just, and the point is that so they found out that one of the engineers did something that they knew nothing about, so they knew nothing how to troubleshoot it, and the networking was down. That person was fired, and basically a week later, another network engineer came on board. It was me. So they very quickly interviewed somebody, and they were very particular about the requirements. They said, "We want a CCIE." That's what they said. They said that we need somebody that knows what they're doing. And when there was an interview process for that, the other engineer was not in that room with them. I was actually doing an interview with all these managers. So that was kind of weird. Anyway, so I get hired, great. And I come on as a contractor because they're not sure if I'm going to be a good fit or not. They want to make sure. They were burned before. But we have some projects going on, and I completed them with flying colors. Well, that was bad, not for me, but for the other network engineer, because he was also terminated as well. Basically, they wanted to make sure that I was a good fit, and I love this guy. This was a great guy, okay? And they fired him because of how they were burned, because they felt like that those other engineers did not know what they were doing. And I'm telling you this story, and for other people who are watching this video, you want to be very careful about what you do, because if you do not know something, you could potentially bring down the entire network, and that will taint your experience. And basically, you're out the door. They're going to fire you. And as we say, the valley is very, very small. So people will find out about why were you fired, and there'll be concerns with that. So anyway, that would be my advice to how to handle the situation that you're in. And before we conclude this video, I just want to make a great announcement that we release a new training series on our site for learning how to deploy an enterprise solution That involves a redundant LAN and BGP deployment. So there's redundant core switches, redundant edge routers. We're doing BGP for inbound and outbound routing using different attributes. We're doing other things like HSRP. We're doing other things with dynamic routing with OSPF among this environment. And of course, all the layer 2 technologies. So this is a very simple, not just simple, sorry, this is more of an advanced solution that's very practical that I have personally deployed in a lot of the customer environments that meets this particular qualification. So it's a great series to do. A lot of you guys have given me a lot of great feedback that you love what this training series is doing. So check it out here at the site for more information. And we're done with this episode. So if you have any questions about being a network engineer or anything related to interviews, certifications, anything network centric, post those questions below in the comments and your question will come up in a future episode on this channel. So thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, subscribe, and support us on routehub.net. And until next time, keep networking.